Selfless or selfish? And which one are you? And which one am I? That's what we're going to be talking about today, is the game that we play between selfless and selfish. Because somewhere along the line, someone has told us, don't be selfish. Or somewhere along the line, someone has told us, be selfless. But how do we really begin to understand the difference? And then how do we garner an awareness to where we can observe our own actions from a distant point of view and recognize what state of being am I existing in? How am I being in the world right now? And so the first thing I want to do is set up some fundamental levels of understanding that will help us as we continue to expand this idea. The first being that in a selfish realm, we live with the little s, self. In the selfless realm, it is the capital S, self. We can take this little s and elaborate it to the ego. And we could take this uppercase S, the higher self, and we can put this in a state of transcendence. We use the word transcendence. Transcendence. Good. Now, how do we begin to understand when we're moving from a selfish point of view? What does it mean to be selfish? Well, if we see that it's the little s, self, the ego, we can understand that selfish action exists from the mind. It stems from the mind, because the thing that we need to understand about selfish or selfless, and this is a tongue twister, I'm going to be twisting my tongue the whole time, selfish, selfless, is that we're asking the question of where does it come from? Where does this action come from? Where does my way of being come from? Thus, if selfish is the mind, we can see selfless as the heart. And everyone wants to think that we can just move into a selfless way of being without understanding that it all originates in the mind in a selfish origin, right? As a child, you grow up, we're told that we are the center of the world. You're the center of your parents' world, right? So you have this mind that creates the ego that nurtures the self up, the little self up, and it creates this point where we exist in the mind. You know, you think of, I believe it's pronounced Descartes, René Descartes, I think, therefore I am. I think, therefore I am. Exists in the mind. What about if in a heart stance, in the selfless stance, it's just not that I think, therefore I am, it's I know I am. Thus, what do you know about yourself? What do you truly know about yourself? Well, we can see that, let's break this down a little bit more in terms of the capital S and the lowercase s, self, because that is really where we can start to decipher between the two. The capital S, self, was never born and will never die. You could look at it as spirit. Regardless, it's the highest way of being that exists inside of us. It is the intuition, the wisdom that lies within, the all-knowing. So how do we experience the little s, self? Or how can we come to understand it? We can come to understand the little s self as being what was grown over time. You see, the capital S self was never born, never die. It will never grow. There's no growth. It is in unshakable equanimity. Let's see if I can spell that. Unshakable equanimity. It is neutral. It cannot be pleased. It cannot be disappointed. It cannot be up, not can be down. It does not live in the world of duality. It is in unison. It's one. Singular. You get the point. I choose to see this capital S self as the God within. It'll never stop loving you. No matter what you do in the world, it will never stop loving you. Or he, if you want to use the capital H, he will never stop loving you. Thus, we move over to the small self, the ego, which has grown through adolescence. Thus, it has the opportunity to be hurt. It lives in the world of duality. Good and bad. Now, when we talk about transcendence, right, this word transcendence, it is the transcendence from one to the other, to recognize. We see like, it's almost, imagine like a Venn, this Venn diagram. We have, this little s self, and then we have the big self, right? Or big capital S. You see what I'm saying? And you get the, boom. And there's this little in between, right? And we have these glimpses. We have these glimpses of clarity where we see clearly, right? Where there is a merging of these two, where we feel this unison. It can be known as bliss, right? Clarity is bliss, or it's blissful to be in clarity. It's complete flow. It's the lack of irrelevance of time or space or matter. We're just purely existing in unison. Now, when you think about this transcendence, it is a working with. The small self, it is grown, but it cannot be eliminated. It can't be eliminated. Thus, how do we learn to work with the small self? How do we create a Venn diagram that essentially looks like one, right? Where we're in one, where this big S self and the little s self are working in tandem, are working together. Now you might think, well, because the little s self was born, can it die? Yeah, of course, it'll die when you die, when the body dies. It moves with the flesh. It is on the it is outside of the heart, I should say. However, when we create awareness of the little s self, when we create awareness, which is, that's really all we talk about all the time on this channel, or I talk about. It's not we. But you're talking in your head right now as you're listening. So, which self is talking? It's a good question to ask. And which self is listening? It's another good question. I love just complimenting myself on good questions. Okay. Let's see where we were. Yeah, we're talking about the transcendence of these two selves. Thus, let's bring it back around to selfless and selfish, right? Because we come to a moment of awareness at some point, as I erase this, we come to a moment of awareness at some point during young adult years where we decide, hey, it's not that fun to be selfish. But then again, like, how do I not be selfish? Right? Because we have this misunderstanding that to be selfless, we have to think less of ourself. But it has nothing to do with the value that you put on yourself. It is purely about getting outside of the constraints of the mind and moving into the heart. Because the heart knows. Right? For instance, you could use the coaching world for an example, where you name your own prices, right? I name my own price to work with somebody. Now, if I was thinking from a selfish, right? Okay, let me actually stop myself there. Let's use an example. I name a price with somebody. Let's say we work together for $10,000, right? $10,000. Whatever your goal is, we talk, we establish that that's our working relationship, $10,000. Okay. That's the cost to work together, right? That's just a number. Okay, now where does it stem from? A selfish point of view? A selfless point of view or a selfish point of view? And that is the origin of where we become aware of the self. Aware of both selves. Aware of both self and self. Right? Because the selfless point of view is, okay, I charge $10,000 because that's the cost to work with me, and that's how this person's going to get the highest level of value out of this relationship. That's the value that I provide. There's no guessing. It comes from a place of knowing. Now, the same could be said of selfish, right? Okay, so I charge $10,000 to work with someone. Okay, but if I come from a place of I think it's worth that because I saw someone else do it, well, then we venture into the realm of selfish because we don't know. Thinking versus knowing. Thinking versus knowing. Because thinking has duality attached to it. Knowing is singular. I know this is what it costs to work with me, and this is how the person's going to get the highest level of value out of working together, and ultimately they're going to achieve exactly what they want because we are going to allow him or her to start to move from the inside out, to start to garner awareness, to be more free in the world so that they can go and be whoever it is that they want to be. However, if I think this is the value, well, then I move from a place of lack. Then I move from a place of, well, I think this is what we should do, and I think this is how I can help you. No. I know I can help you, so I name the price. So you can think of anything that you do in the world where you name your price, right? Maybe you're giving a lesson to someone. Maybe you're helping someone with a project. Whatever it may be, there's a number in your head that you know is the worth of what you're going to do. And then there's a secondary number that is normally less. It's normally less. So say $6,000. Well, I'm only going to charge them $6,000 because I feel kind of bad. I feel kind of bad, right? Bad. Well, if you feel kind of bad, then there's also good. Back to duality. Right? So you just undervalued yourself. You just lessened the value of your service because you were moving from a false place, a misunderstanding of selfish versus selfless. That's why when people say trust your gut knows. Could the gut be the self? The capital S self? So that's a little example as it ties to money because everyone wants to get attached. No, well, let me pause that. Everyone inherently at some point in their life feels an attachment to money. Unless it becomes a process of detaching from the amount. The amount is literally irrelevant. The amount is irrelevant. You know, there's just examples of people who might give their last dollar to somebody. And there's an example of someone who's got, $50 million and they give $2 to somebody. Just the attachment to money. I kind of lost where I was going with that example, but You get the gist. You'll make a point of it in your head. That's fine. It's late. It's been a long day. I've been editing my book literally all. You know when girls say, like, I've been running around all day. I've been running around all day. I've been editing all day. But actually all day. 8 a.m. to, this is being recorded at like 10 p.m. I went for an hour-long walk. I rode my longboard. And I made dinner. And a little lunch in between. But we call it, chocolate, it's about 10 hours. And we're going to finish it tomorrow. Okay, so now let's get into the idea of, okay, well, I'm starting to gain a little understanding. Starting to gain understanding of selfish and selfless. I see the difference. I see that selfless comes from a place of knowing. Selfish comes from a place of thinking. Selfless, knowing. Selfish, thinking. Huh, okay. I'm starting to understand that. So how do we start to, how does the individual begin the process of transcending? I think I'm spelling transcending right. S-C-E-N. Either way, you get the idea. Listen to my words, and then I just write for myself. The process of transcending. Either way, how do we start to understand the process of transcending? How do we start to enact the process of transcending? Well, the first thing is becoming aware. So you're there right now. There's awareness. Okay, but aware of what? Aware of the senses, because the senses live in the world of pleasure and pain. They live in the world of, you said it, duality. So thus the process of transcending is moving down. Funny, we move down to go up, as above, so below. We move down into this realm of the awareness of the duality of pleasure and pain. And from that awareness, well, now we have choice. We have choice of action. Choice of action because it's all about the place that it stems from. Where does it stem from? Where does the action stem from? Where does the action that I'm taking right now stem from? Where does the action of me making this video stem from? Does it stem from a place of it is my calling to make a video and this is the video I had thought of and I'm just following my own way of being and that's what I want to do? Well, yeah. Okay, well then that's from a selfless place. Does the action come from me wanting a bunch of views to make a bunch of money so that I can do this? Well, no, but that would be selfish. Selfish lives in the world of seeking. Selfish says, if I get this, then I am that. If I get this, then I am that. Because remember, it's the ego, thus it's the mind, just playing a game. It's just playing games all day. The mind is literally just playing games all day. Well, if I get this, then I'll feel that. Well, if I could do this, then I'll get that. Well, if I could stop doing this, I'd actually feel that. Where the self, the big ass self just sits over here like, just literally chilling. It's just chilling. It's just like, hey, I'm here. Whenever you want to, get past the senses, I'm just here chilling. I'm just hanging out, waiting for you to see me. Okay, so let's zoom out for a moment. The process of transcending leads to awareness of the senses. pleasures and pain, duality. So thus, how do we begin to understand living in accordance with what you could call the Dharma, your Dharma? Everyone has a Dharma. The path lined up for you, because as the Bhagavad Gita says, it is better to make a mistake on your own Dharma than to live perfectly on someone else's. Because if I live perfectly on someone else's Dharma, well, it's selfish because I'm seeking. I'm living in a world of seeking. If it's my own Dharma, I'm chilling. And you might ask yourself, well, how do I know? You know, right? Because the self always knows. Anytime I've ever told a lie in my life, my personal life, it's because I was seeking something from someone else so that I could feel something. However, when I follow my own Dharma, when I start to walk alongside the grain of the universe, dude, I'll tell my secrets all day long. My secrets all day long. You know, I played professional baseball for quite some time. And the biggest realization I had as I got to the end of my playing career was that I was playing in a realm of seeking. That I wanted to do this so that this would happen, rather than just doing it to do it. Because we can bring it back to the idea that all of us are entitled to the work, not the fruit of the work. Not because if I am working for the fruit of the work, then I have attachment. And if I have attachment, I'm living in the world of duality. If I'm living in the world of duality, I'm living in my mind. If I'm living in my mind, I'm living in a selfish world. Because the heart, the capital S self, its natural state is patience. It has nowhere to go because it's never born and it never dies. Thus, it's a place of dropping. It's a place of dropping beneath the mind into the heart. Oh, I got the pens on the rack again. That's why it's rattling around. I had them in my pocket last video. It's been a long day. But again, I just knew, I didn't think, I knew, well, I gotta make a video today, and I had the word selfish written up on this board all day, thinking about, well, how do I want to present this idea of selfish and selfless? And the funny part about the entire conversation, the entire idea, selfish, the funny part is that you know. And if you don't know, then it reverts back to selfish. So do you see, now it's just a circle, whoop, all the way around. You know, you might help an old lady cross the street, right? You help an old lady cross the street, but are you doing it so that you can be seen helping this old lady cross the street, so that you might get some feeling of gratification from someone else acknowledging you? Or are you doing it because you Just know that you should. Oh, boom, I just act. Okay, I do. Because those are often the things that you don't tell anyone about. You know you have things, as you watch this, that you've done that come from a place of your heart center, of the God within you, that you've never told anyone. Because it's beneath the mind. The mind doesn't feel the need to just talk about it all day. Reflect on that for a moment. Let yourself feel the action, because you know it. You know you have something you've done in your life that you just did without thinking. That's dharma. That is selfless action. Because it could just be that selfless, let's break down the word for a moment as we kind of wrap up this video. Selfless it's just less of a little less self. Just a little less. Just a little less, and then, just a little more of the big S self. Just a little more tuning into the heart space of, like, what's being asked of me right now? Boom, go do. Because you know it'll come up and you have to do it. You just have to act. You just have to act. You have to get beyond the senses of, well, is it going to feel good or bad? Is it going to help me? Is it going to hurt me? Whatever other questions that come up in your mind of this or that, this or that, this or that, this or that. I mean, you just play the game of back and forth all day long. Boom, 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 boom. Where if you could just begin to allow yourself to understand that the capital S self, the Atman within, bro, it just goes down the bumpers of life so easy. So easy. Yet here we are putting up the bumpers of life, hitting it side to side, good and bad, all the way down. Finally, we get to the end and we knock a couple pins down and we think that we're the ones that did it. I am not the doer. I am not the doer. It is not me who does it, but rather him. The God within. I am not the doer. You are not the doer. And the more deeply that you understand and truly know that, you become unembarrassable. It's literally unembarrassable. Because who cares? Who cares? I care. I care. I care. The ego cares. But in the understanding that I am not the doer, I am not the doer. So who is there to be embarrassed? Who is there to fail? Who is there to whatever else you want to think of? So as you start to frame it into your own life, the opportunity you have is to begin to become aware, or rather enter into the awareness that is already happening. It's like just getting dropped in. It's already happening, of where is the action stemming from. And you always know. And then comes the opportunity when you know of, are you going to make the choice to lie to yourself? Because now you're in the realm of awareness. So the only ignorance is done through chosen ignorance. The only ignorance is done through chosen ignorance. Rather, can you get beyond the senses into the place of, well, I have to do this. There's no other option but for me to follow my own dharma and to pursue whatever it is that my heart feels is necessary for me to pursue. And who am I to question that? Who am I to question that? So I'm going to leave you with a question. I'm going to leave you with a question. And it'll give you a little, question will give you a little hit of dopamine. A little hit of that natural dopamine. That OG. That natural. Okay. Reflect. Reflect, write, and feel. When you acted out of a selfish way of being, and then do the same thing the same, right? Reflect, write, and feel about a time that you acted from a selfless way of being. And just notice as you write, just allow yourself to write. You know what? Set a 10-minute timer for each. And just write. And just allow yourself to see what comes up. Because in one instance, you're going to write from the heart without even trying. You'll write from the heart. And with one instance, you'll write from the mind. And those are two very, very different places to write from. And when you decide to take the time to look inside and to write and to reflect and to feel the interior of the self, you inherently deem yourself worthy of love and appreciation. And when you deem yourself worthy of love and appreciation, you're able to give naturally, without effort, love and appreciation to everyone else and everything else in the world. Thank you. God bless.